ለመማር ወደ ትምህርት ተቋም መሄድ ግድ አይደለም። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
ራሳችሁን ከኮሮና ቫይረስ ወረርሽኝ እየጠበቃችሁ በቤታችሁ ወይም በተመቻችሁ ቦታ በኢንተርኔት አማካኝነት በኦንላይን ትምህርታችሁን መከታተል ትችላላችሁ።
ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ኢንስቲትዩት ኦፍ ኮመርሻል ማኔጅመንት ICM ጋር በመተባበር የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶችን ተከታትላችሁ በ6 ወር ጊዜ በዓለም አቀፍ ደረጃ ተቀባይነት ያለውን የስልጠና ማስረጃ ባለቤት መሆን ይቻላል።
ልምድ ባላቸው መምህራን እየተማራችሁ ጥያቄና መልስ፣ የክፍል ስራዎች፣ ፈተና መፈተን ክፍል ውስጥ እንዳላችሁት አይነት በኦንላይን ባላችሁበት ቦታ ከናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ
We did start what we call tour packages. Perhaps the first thing we did mention is that a tour is any form of transport from place to place with multiple features that can be packaged and be sold as a single unit. That is one thing we mentioned. And we said tours started long way back in 1840s when one British individual called Thomas Cook organized the first trip, the first tour in England. That is the first thing the second thing we mentioned. But with the time, tours have changed and have included a lot more things. They've evolved from country to country. Nowadays, every country virtually has some tours that operate within their boundaries. And we said one reason why tours are becoming more popular nowadays is because they come in myriad forms. They come in different forms. Different forms in the sense that they can suit virtually every individual's needs and budget. So that is why they are becoming so popular. We say tours can be divided into two types: the custom designed tour and the prepackaged tours. Prepackaged tours, we further subdivided them into three. One, the independent tours. Two, hosted tours, and escorted tours. We looked at each and we did look at what is the difference between all of them. So we did not go through that. Moreover, we said prepackaged tours have got different components. Remember, when we said that a tour is any form of transport, any form of travel, from place to place with multiple features. These features are the components of a tour, specifically the components of a prepackaged tour. They are five components of a prepackaged tour. One, what is the first component of a prepackaged tour? What is the first component of prepackaged tours? What do you think? I mean, what do you know? Because we did look at them. Components of prepackaged tours. Yes, Radit.
Transport.
Transport is one component. That is good. Another one, a different person. Let me have all of them come up with an idea. Any other component of a prepackaged tour prepackaged tours? Any other? Hang on. Another one?
Sightseeing.
Which one?
Sightseeing.
Sightseeing. That is good. That is another one. Sightseeing. You can call it attractions. Kalkidan, another one? Kalkidan? Fisa, another one?
Can you pass me?
All right. I have done that. So we said components of a prepackaged tour includes transport. Because of passing you, let me answer the questions. Then we have transport. Virtually every tour includes transportation. And sightseeing. Sightseeing comes up as a number 2, attractions in short. Tours got to include something people have to see. And perhaps we said, especially in the independent tours, where people travel alone, they are given a voucher in which they can use it and they can go as they please. So that is what we mentioned. So the other thing we mentioned is that we've got, apart from attractions and sightseeing, we have other things like accommodation. Yeah. So we said we've got transport, accommodation, attractions, that is sightseeing. We've got meals and itinerary. The itinerary, we said, is much different from what we used to do in geography in travel planning 1. So the itinerary, yes, we need to consider the 5 basic elements of planning an itinerary, the PRIDE word, that is pace, routing, interests, details, and energy. However, the itinerary of a tour, we said, must include the length of the tour, how long, in terms of days, because a tour has to include more than 1 day, has to be more than 1 day. Any trip that is within 1 day, we said that is an excursion. So then in each day, you need to break it down that you talk about day 1, what to do, where to visit, what time, and what to eat, where to sleep, perhaps. Everything has to be included until the last day. That is the itinerary. Moreover, we did look at the advantages of selling. Yeah, Alan is mentioning the meals. All right, that is good. Don't forget the meal plans. We mentioned those comes as part of the components of a tour. So that is what we did. And we looked at the advantages of selling tours to participants and to us travel agents. So today, because we did a lot, today I would like us to look at a different thing, perhaps a different thing. We did look at that. So we need to look at a tour brochure. This is what we need to look at. A brochure, we said it's used as a sales tool. That is number 1, a sales toolkit. In most cases, it is used by the sales and marketing representatives. You can call them the sales reps. And in most cases, a brochure can vary from a single leaflet with basic information to a booklet with detailed information. That's 1. And in other cases, we can have a brochure, each brochure describing a specific tour, only 1 tour. But a booklet of a brochure can have different tours described inside. That's another thing we mentioned. Besides that, we said, before you give your client a brochure, you need to qualify your client. Qualify your client. Qualifying a client in this context, we mean you need to talk to your customer first. Talk to your customers to get to know what are their needs, what type of tour they need, what type of accommodation they require, what types of transport they prefer. You qualify the client. Once you qualify the client, then you offer the client 1 or 2 or more brochures, depending on your analysis. And here, the reason why you cannot give a client 1 brochure is you don't have to limit your client to 1 product or to 1 tour, to 1 service. So you need to give them an opportunity to at least compare and choose, make a decision by themselves. So that is one reason why you need to provide 2 or more brochures. So you do not have to limit your client. Plus, it all depends on what they need. If a client requests for a 5-day tour, you cannot give them a brochure that is with a tour of 2 days. You have to look at what they need. Then once you provide such brochures, in any business, what we actually recommend is go over the most important elements of that brochure with your client. Go through it. Going through it means that you've got to explain to the client the most important things he or she needs to understand in that brochure. The key element will be that you may not cover everything in that brochure, or then clients may forget. So you need to encourage them to keep on reading the finer points. Finer points could be about the terms and the conditions. So you need to encourage them to do that. And for you to ensure that you cover the most important things in a brochure, you need to develop what we call a tour brochure checklist. A tour brochure checklist is another thing you need to develop. How does it look like? A checklist is just a list of items, a list of things, a list of ideas that you need to talk with your client about. So I will share with you one such list, what it contains. So a tour brochure checklist, you should always be familiar with your brochure. And being familiar does not mean, what I mean here is that you must master your pitch, master your business. In customer service, there's one thing you call product knowledge, that you got to understand exactly what services you offer. Meaning, if you master what you offer, you know it best. So it needs you to explain it better. So in your tour brochure checklist, 1, you've got to cover the cost of the tour. The cost of the tour, you need to look at. Right. All right. I happen to remember that too. So I'm just brushing through this is where we stopped actually last time. So we said under the brochure checklist, first, you have to cover what we include as a cost. Then talk about what is included and what's excluded. The itinerary, explain the whole itinerary, just to ensure that the client understands their interests are actually put in place. Talk about the group size. How many people will be traveling in that tour? Perhaps we said here, most people may not be comfortable within some ranges. So you need to ensure that is in place. The speed is number 4, the pace. How many days, how many hours, in what place they'll take the longest time, and what they'll be doing there. Terminology, we said you got to explain every vocabulary that is used in the brochure. Then single supplements, one thing that we said clients should always understand, that single supplements could be more expensive to some extent, and this is what we have. If a client is traveling alone, they need to understand that that could be more expensive. So besides that, we should always look at some tours include what we call insurance policies. They may be covered, and if so, then we should let our clients understand which policies, so that they should not be overinsured or underinsured. Environmental sustainability is what we said all about responsible tourism. Everyone is focused on this environmental sustainability in the sense that they need to conserve and preserve the environment. They may prefer some resorts that go for organic foods, and that is responsible tourism. Explain the terms and conditions, perhaps, and answer all the questions. So that is what we did in the past class. So we need to look at this. The tour brochure price quotation. How do you price up a tour? How do you price up a tour? So number one, you need to look at what factors can affect the price of a tour. What factors? So there are so many factors that can affect the price of a tour. Number one is the pre-tour transport. This can affect the price of the tour. Pre-tour transport, here we're referring to the means of transport that participants are using before the start of that tour. So if a tour is departing from Addis Ababa and a passenger is flying from Hawassa, for example, to Addis to depart for a tour, what happens is that part of transport before the departure of the tour is not included in the price, and that can affect the price of the tour at the end of the day. Number two, the other factor is what we call accommodation. The type of accommodation. Number one, we know that we've got different types of accommodation, from hotels, resorts, inns, lodges, and the rest. Assuming we go for soft adventure, where participants will be staying in hotels. The first thing is, which type of hotel? 5-star hotel? 3-star hotel? Prices will vary according to that. The quality of services that are provided in such accommodation facilities will either make the prices to go up or down. Down if the quality is not the best. Then the other factor is about attractions. What type of attractions? We know visiting different places, the entrance fee to each site is not the same. There are some places that are more expensive, others are cheaper. So that will again affect the price of the tour. And of course, how many attraction sites? The less or the lesser the attraction sites, the number of attraction sites, the cheaper the cost. The more the attraction sites to be visited, the higher the cost. So that is how these prices will be affected. Number four is under the accommodation occupancy. Here we look at this way. If we talk about hotel rooms, for example, we've got single rooms and double rooms. A double room is a room meant for 2 people, and of course they share the cost of that room. So what happens is, single occupancy in most cases is more expensive than double occupancy, right? So what will happen is, we look at how many people will be sharing this room. If it's 1 person, then it will mean the cost again will be high. If it's a shared room, they will have to share the cost of that room. So again, that will make the price either to go up or down, depending on the type of accommodation occupancy we go for. Number 5, it is some kind of an optional service, insurance. The policies for insurance coverage will affect the ultimate price of the tour if taken. And in most cases, these policies are optional. The client can decide to be covered or not. If they be covered, that policy will have its own fair share of the price. So it will be topped up into the cost of that tour. So again, what will happen is, depending on what policy is taken or policy taken, the price will go up. If no insurance at all, yeah, the passenger is willing to take the risk, but what will happen is the cost will be cheaper. But again, cheap can be expensive somewhere. But these are the factors that affect the price of a tour. So anytime we price up tours, we need to consider that. And of course, before I finish, I tell you how do you cost that itinerary, that tour. Besides that, it's about reservations and accounting procedures. How do you reserve a tour? We said tours include components. And apparently, because it has to be sold as a single unit, each component may be reserved separately. That is the truth. Because one, if we talk about transportation, if clients prefer to fly and drive, a fly-drive kind of accommodation, transport. So you need to book the flights separately. You need to do the car rental separately. If we go for accommodation, you need to do, if they use different types of accommodation facilities, then each facility needs a reservation. It could be much easier if they use a chain of hotels, but we normally may not be having such chains of resorts and hotels. So what happens is each accommodation booked or to be booked should be done separately. You cannot do one for Sheraton and assuming that is done for Hilton. It's a different thing. So tour reservations are made in most cases through telephoning. That is one thing. Or they can be done through the agency's computer reservation systems. A system like what you use. You can combine using a telephone and a CRS. You can use a computer reservation system to book flights, hotels, such like things. But when it comes to making, or even current, when it comes to making a reservation for another thing, you got to use the telephone. So we've got different. However, technology is making it much easier. We can even do the bookings or reservations online using the internet. So as a travel agent or tour operator, you have three options: telephone, CRS, or internet. The most convenient one is always telephoning because you get first-hand information through that. So that is what we use. So when making a tour reservation, assuming you are calling a specific event tour operator that you need to make a reservation, what do you need to include? Number one, you got to cover the following items. Introduce yourself, your name, and your agency name. All right? Introduce yourself, your name, and your agency name for clarity purposes. Number two, the name and the availability of the tour. That is another thing you need to cover. What type of tour? Of course, we mentioned three types of tours. They are the same types of tours we take. It's only that we gave them specific names. So you've got to look at the availability of such. Number 2 or 3, sorry, you look at the proposed dates of the tour. Which dates are the tour? This again will determine the prices once again, because we have different seasons. We know that tourism is a highly seasonal industry, characterized by high seasons, low season, and of course, shoulder season. If the dates fall into the high season, the prices will be that high again. Then the full legal names, addresses, and relevant contact information of the client and of your business. They are also required. Then you need to cover what you call air transfer information. If you remember, when we did talk about the prepackaged tours, we said they may or they will include, especially independent tours, they will include transfers, either to and from the hotel or the airport of arrival. Those are the transfers we're talking about. So air transfers here, meaning if passengers will be picked from the airport to the specific location and back to the airport when they want to go back. So that has to be included. Then you talk about any special requests or situations. Here, it is the time when you've got to look at your clients, for example. Do they have any medical condition that needs special attention? Do they require some specific foods, meals? That's what you look at. Some clients can request a specific procedure or protocol of meals. For example, during the tours, during the day, they can request for what we call picnic lunch. A picnic lunch is a lunch that is carried from the hotel. They will eat that lunch on the tour when they are out of the hotels or the resorts. So they not go to the hotel to eat, they'll be carrying lunch. So picnic lunch, literally, it is the packed lunch. So they can request, that can be a special request for clients. It can be guaranteed, it can be offered or not, depending on the hotel and the facility. So as a tour operator or a travel agent, you need to always communicate with the resorts, the hotels, to ensure every request is in place. So by having such information or covered that information, you shall have made a proper reservation. So in return, you'll be given the reservation number, the vouchers, and the rest. Then we have the accounting procedures. How do you record the process? How do you track the passengers? How do you check the payments? So keeping a track of both administrative and financial details is one most important function of a tour operator. That is the first thing. Tour operators have got different policies, different procedures of or regarding some key administrative and accounting procedures. Regarding one, reservations. Some companies may require that you do the reservation and after that, the booking should be done or a deposit should be paid a given number of days. Then they will explain when the final payment is due. So this administrative and financial accounting procedures may include reservations, deposits, refunds, and commissions. For a client to be given a refund, there's always a protocol that has to be followed, especially after a deposit has been paid. Companies have got different policies. We'll look at some shortly. So it will be very important as a tour operator if you can have a system that is a system that can track these passengers and give you a reminder that a certain passenger paid the deposit and the final payment is due. Because sometimes you may, as humans are, you may forget because of the business of your office and all such. But it will be important to develop a tracking system that contains the following information. One, the name and the date of the specific tour booked. What tour was booked? Was it an independent tour, hosted, or escorted, or custom designed? How many people were booked in that tour? The number. The date passengers were booked on the tour. The system should always be able to remind you that. And the dates and the amount of the initial deposit. How much? However, deposits here will be determined by the company policy. Some companies require, if a client has chosen a tour, a reservation is made, a deposit should be 50%. Some. Others require any amount. But a deposit is just a guarantee that a tour will be taken. Then the system should be able to let you know, the date of the final payment. When is it due? Again, this will be guided by the policies of any company. Some companies require that the final payment should be made 1 month before the date of departure of that tour. So again, that will come in. Some will require that the final payment will include the last day of departure. Again, this varies from company to company. Then the system should also be able to give you the rates for various tour participants. We've got different types of participants in tours, and they be given different rates. So the system should be able to tell you. And this comes in the same way we did look at what we called consolidator net fares. A system alerts the BSP, for example, on the tour codes. So again, that should come in here. Document delivery. What receipts, what documents, what vouchers were issued? So the system should be able to record all that. And of course, the name and contact information for the operator's representative. All that information should be included in your tracking systems. So by that, you can be able to do much good work about accounting procedures. But don't forget, that does not end there. The point is, we need to simplify this to 3 things. When making a reservation and taking some accounting procedures, make a point of accomplishing the following 3 tasks every time you do the booking. So the key functions you should perform when you do the booking or reservation is here. 1, get a name. My question is here, what name? Get the name of the tour, the name of the operator's representative, the name of your company and your name, of course, and the name of the passengers. Such information. Get a name. That is number 1. Number 2, get a number. The number, starting from the number of passengers going for that tour to the telephone numbers, that is just for contact purposes, and the reservation number, very important, because you cannot book a tour without a reservation number. So it has to be given. So you must record that reservation number. It has to be included. Next, get it in writing. get an agreement. An agreement is a contract between the components. Components here, I'm referring to the suppliers. If it's about car rental, then you should get it in an agreement. That is in writing. Both parties have to sign that we agreed this number of days for a car rental and this amount of money. Get it in writing when it comes to accommodation facilities. Hotels give what we call contract rates to tour operators and travel agents. Those contract rates are always on the files. So when you quote a price of a hotel room, it has to be something that you agreed with the hotel. If you didn't, when you telephone them that you need this hotel, get it in writing. And so many other things. In short, capture all these three things when you perform such functions. Very important. So that is how you do the accounting and reservations of a tour. We had a question in the last class that what if a client chooses a tour, books a tour, goes for the tour, but comes back and complains that he didn't or she did not enjoy that tour. Right. We agreed that someone has to take the responsibility. But again, we look at that liability. How does it come in? First, we need to look at the tour booking conditions. Brochures, a tour brochure will always have terms and conditions, T and C's. Terms and conditions will always be explained. So under the terms and conditions, one, when you quote a tour cost or price, you should indicate to your client that cost includes what? It excludes what? It should be explained to the client so that a client goes for a tour well prepared. In most cases, our tour costs cover, of course, transport, most important, round-trip transport, accommodation in specific hotels, meals, but meals here, clients have to choose the types of meals. They could go for European plan meal, bed and breakfast, Bermuda plan. They could go for American, modified American plan or American plan. Such meal plans, they will come in there, and attractions. If passengers are traveling alone independently, especially in independent tours, they'll be given a voucher that will allow them to enter every attraction that is included in the itinerary. So if you cannot explain what the tour cost includes to your client, then it will mean they will assume the cost covers even the tips. Right? So you need to explain it. You need to understand what the tour includes. So unless a tour brochure states clearly that a feature is included, it's safest, of course, as a tour participant, it's safest to assume it's not included. But unless a tour brochure states clearly that a feature is included. So to avoid embarrassments, that is why we said you need to explain it to your client for them to understand the inclusions and the exclusions. Some items may not be included in the cost of a tour. Some of them. And such items will include this. We talk about the customs and immigration fees. That is not covered. It's not included in the cost of a tour. Airport charges or port charges, they will not be included in most cases. City taxes. Taxes may not be included here unless the brochure or the operator included them. Laundry services, they are not included, or they may not be included. Food and beverages. Food, specifically, when you talk about meals, we talk about what plan of meals. So if someone goes for a bed and breakfast, they will be given a bed and a breakfast every day. But no lunch, no dinner. Then they have to buy food. Drinks, again, this one, the drinks people have to buy for themselves. But an operator can include, just for enticing clients, can include soft drinks, or maybe what is always provided, so they can include that, or in most cases, excluded. Souvenirs and some personal effects, they will not be included in a tour cost. So such items, and of course, any medical expenses. Medical expenses can be either be paid per individual, per participant, or through the insurance policy. That one can be covered as such, but the cost cannot cover even the pre-existing conditions. They cannot be covered by the cost of a tour. So these are some of the things that we need to look at. Which items are included and excluded as the first thing, terms and conditions. Number two, under terms and conditions, we need to talk about the deposits and the payment schedule. This, as we said, the policies of a company will guide an operator to know when a deposit is due and when the final payment is due. Many tour companies will require a deposit within 7 to 15 days of the initial tour reservation. There is a difference between a reservation and a confirmation here. A confirmation will be given once a deposit is paid. But otherwise, if there is no payment, any whatsoever, that is a reservation. So 1 week to 2 weeks after the initial reservation, a deposit should be paid. And depending on the company, depending on the company, the balance of the payment is generally not later than 30 to 45 days before the departure date. 1 month to 1.5 months before the departure date in most companies. However, this again varies from company to company, but because this is a policy, it's a policy, it cannot be standardized. But we're talking about many companies, and this is what we should always incorporate in our businesses to avoid inconveniences. So after the key deadlines, such as the final payment date, have passed, the operator will only accept a reservation from a prospective tour participant. However, there is no deposit to be paid. It's only full payment. So once we've passed the deadlines for the policies, when the deposit is supposed to be paid and when the final payment should be paid, the operator has the right to accept any other participant or not. If they accept other reservations, it means because the deadlines have passed, then the participant has to pay the full cost of the tour immediately. So there is nothing like a deposit again. So it will be a full payment after the deadlines have passed. Then we have what we call a cancellation policy and a refund policy. What happens if a client requests for a refund or a cancellation? Let's start with cancellations. Cancellations can be initiated in two ways. One, the operator can initiate a cancellation, in which case, if they have valid reasons, they can cancel a tour. And on the other side, the traveler, the passenger, can initiate the cancellation, of which case, again, the company policies will have to come in, especially if the deposit had been paid. So cancellations can be initiated by either the client or the tour operator, depending on the policies. And the policies concerning cancellations are outlined under the terms and the conditions section of the brochure. So there are several reasons. There are several reasons why you, the tour operator, can initiate a cancellation, can cancel a tour. This includes, one, if there is what we call severe weather conditions, conditions that cannot be withstood by any other person. So what happens is the operator can opt to cancel the tour. Number two, if there is political or social instability in that destinations, in those destinations, so an operator can cancel that tour. If there is some labor shortages and strikes, an operator again can cancel. Labor shortages comes in if the workers in such facilities to be visited are not working. So because of strikes or something, they can cancel the tour, because you cannot reach to a destination and just look at each other. Something has to happen. So that can happen. You can organize a tour as an operator targeting 20 passengers, but you get half. You see, every cost of the tour is dependent on the number of passengers. That is the truth. The higher the number, the less the cost per person. So the less the number, the higher the cost per person. Again, that will translate to some set targets. If there is no enough tour participants, especially in escorted tours, the operator can decide to cancel the tour completely. So those are the reasons why an operator may cancel a tour. The other thing is that here. When canceling a tour, some portion of the itinerary can be cancelled. I mean, you cancel the tour partially. Partially meaning that you cancel the tour, some part, and some part is not cancelled. In such cases, as an operator, if you do that, you have two options. So either way, one, even if a client initiates that or you initiate that, client will have to receive a refund of that portion that is missed. However, nowadays, it has become more common that you substitute such missed or cancelled portion with another portion of equal intensity. Instead of doing the refund, change the cancelled services. That is what happens. So clients can get a refund. However, most commonly, you can substitute the cancelled or the event or feature with an equal event of the same value. So that is what it means. And if that means, if you change it, for example, if you change an accommodation, you cancel an accommodation you cancel the 5-star hotel to book a 3-star hotel, it means the rates will have to come down. So the clients will have to get the difference. The difference will have to be refunded to the client. That comes in. So besides that, a client can initiate a cancellation. So a passenger, a tour participant can decide to cancel the tour. Typically, once a deposit is paid, if a tour is cancelled by the client, a penalty will apply. Penalties apply. So the size of the penalty to be paid by the client depends on how close the cancellation is to the departure date. If you can underline that sentence, you will find it somewhere in your next sessions of exams. So the size of the penalty to be paid by the client for cancelling a tour is dependent on how close the cancellation was or is to the departure date. Generally, the further from the departure date, the less costly the penalty is. In some other companies, there is a policy that if a client cancels maybe 45 days before departure, there is no penalty, it's full refund. If a client cancels 3 weeks before departure, they have to pay 25% of the total cost. And such policies apply from company to company. That varies. So lastly, we need to look at what we call the status of the tour brochure fares and rates. Costs of a tour may vary considerably during the seasons, as we mentioned. That is one thing. Tour brochures will typically outline the differences in price in terms of seasonality, high season, low season, or shoulder season. It is important to call your client's attention to these differences. The differences will be determined again from the dates of the proposed tours. So besides the seasons, other factors such as currency fluctuations can also affect the price of a tour, and most tour operators reserve the right to raise the tour costs because of the currency fluctuations. So that one again, underline it. Underline that question. You may find it in question 80, question 781 somewhere. So all those things have to be taken into consideration. In general, finally, once a payment for a tour has been received by the operator, the price of the tour will not change, even if the cost of the operator changes after that date. Once the final payment is done, the cost will not change. But if it's a deposit, something can change. The final payment, nothing will change to that. So when you cost a tour, when you do tour costing, consider these factors. Transport, you have to factor transport in. Number 2, consider the accommodation. You've got to factor it in. Accommodation can come up with meals, if meals will be included. So the hotel or accommodation rates will vary depending on the meal plans. Then consider the transport, the driver allowances, if you're not the one doing it. And you've got to consider attractions. If they got to visit attraction sites, how much are they going to pay per person to enter such parts? Once you calculate that, then look at how many passengers you have and how many rooms you booked, all that. If it's a tour of 2 people, you divide the cost by 2 to get per person sharing. That is tour packages.